Are you looking to level up your author business?
Are you pounding your head against a wall, wondering what your next step should be? Then join me, Daniel Wilcox.
And me, Sacha Black, as we haul ass each week in a bid to level up.
Level up!
Come along for the ride as we delve deep into the business of writing,
Craft,
entrepreneurship,
and every level of the author journey. This is the Next Level Author Podcast. Hello Achievers, and welcome to the Next Level Author Podcast, a podcast where we hold each other to account and track our step-by-step progress as we level up our author business. My name is Sacha Black, and here with me every week is...
Daniel Wilcox!
Hey!
That was completely unplanned. I would just like to say, so it shows I was listening to you,
Yeah,
and I don't always, though.
I was wondering if I was going to catch you out with that.
No.
I thought I'd try.
No, I was a thespian before, darling. I can improv.
I'm prepared, just ready for it. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm all excited because for those on YouTube, you'll be able to see these great big bits of MDF or wood or whatever you want to call it beside me, which is going to be my audio booth, which I'm super excited about because, oh my God, do I need to get my books recorded in audio. And I've got also a huge whiteboard, which I'm super excited to put on the wall because that's how I like manage my life, is on a whiteboard with these magnetic things that I can write on. So yeah, I'm excited to like get organized again. And what else? Yeah, what else is new? Oh no, wait, we'll cover that later. Yeah, that's it for now.
Okay, cool.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm coming out of the end of a. It's not even been a busy week. It's been a hard week because I decided to give blood on Monday, and then that just basically incapacitated me for half the week. So I've been trying to get through stuff while fighting against my body, which has been fun, but I've managed to push through.
What's your reaction when you give blood? Because I get extremely tired. So for listeners, we both give blood regularly. Blood. Yeah, you don't get paid for it, I'd like to say, in the UK. You just, it's something that you do, you donate, which I've always thought was really important. Anyway, but yeah, I get very tired. I don't know about you, but that's what happens to me after.
Yeah, I think you get to quite early on in the evening, and then you get really super tired. I have found as well, I don't know if it's related in any way, but I did find that I got ridiculously thirsty because I donated on Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday I've just been thirsty pretty much ever since. And I don't mean thirsty for some.
Vampire. Somebody, I'm gonna get garlic for the next episode. No, what did you hydrate before you go? Because they always say the evening before you're supposed to hydrate.
Yeah, I hydrate. I eat. I've donated when I've not, and I know what impact that has. So I'm careful when I go. But yeah, I drink. They're a massive drink when I get there. I've already drunk I do 2 pints before I go. I've eaten lunch and stuff. So. Yeah, I'm all prepared, but yeah, even now I'm thirsty. I don't know what it is, whether someone's going to go in the comments like, you've got this illness, and I'll be like, oh.
Yeah.
It's like thirstitis.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound good.
It's terminal. Oh no, but the podcast is so good. I enjoy it every week.
You can do it solo, it's fine.
No, I cannot. It's just not the same without you. Anyway.
Yes, weekly confessional. So what have you done, or did you do the thing you said you were going to do?
I did. I finished both books and I handed them off. I have to say, finishing them wasn't the issue. It was the issue was handing them over because I was absolutely shitting.
You're going to love my question
about handing them off. Yeah, because so I've never, as we've said, I've not really co-written before, and I'm very precious over who sees rough drafts, and I was doing the first draft, and so I did edit it obviously, but I only really have one person who's seen like my writing in that raw state, and I also masquerade around pretending that nobody reads my work and like nobody reads my published books, which is obviously not true because I've sold so many books, but I like to live in denial about these things, and knowing somebody else who I really respect was going to read my work, just I was like physically shaking over sending them, and but I did, and I think I had to do something else. My Q3 goals, which I have done, and I have proof. It's in my new journal. And yeah, I have done my goals, which I'm now, for listeners, I'm showing Dan my goals, and for YouTubers, you would have seen them. So I've broken them up by creative goals, marketing goals, business goals, and everything else goals. So I've sort of separated them.
Because when you don't have enough goals.
Yeah. And the other thing I did was, which I didn't do last time, I separated them by month. So over the three months. Yeah, because otherwise I'd just like have this huge mountain of goals.
Yeah. It's a good idea.
And yeah, so I've put, so to be fair, July is the heaviest month and September is the lowest month, but they can chop and change. So, but yeah, because otherwise I was going to try and have all of them in my brain. So now I just have some goals for this month, some goals for August, and the ones that are in August and September I don't have to think about.
Beautiful.
What about you?
Nice. I will quickly comment first. If you hear weird creaking, it's because I'm sitting on a creaky chair, which every time I interview, I'm realizing is more and more creaky than I imagined. And I am not farting. I just want to make that clear.
My chair does that too. It's leather. It's so awkward.
I'm saying it's like 10 years old now, so I'm probably in the market for some new ones. Anyway, so I was going to launch When Winter Comes, episode 1, and finish off some client work so that I could crack on with some other things. And I launched a book 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. Which it went as I expected. I think because, you know, it's been a while since I've actually solidly gone into real publishing fiction under my own name. I think it kind of met my expectations with the amount of sales and things that trickling by. So it wasn't an explosive launch, but it was steady, and it's being read by people, which is obviously what I want. And then the plan with this book is the next episode is going to come out in 2 weeks. The next episode after that is going to come out in 2 weeks. And then after that, it's going to be a monthly cycle of new episodes until the book is finished. And I've got to remember as well that because it is not bite-sized, I mean, each story is, you know, a minimum of 20,000 words. I've got to remember that it's completely blanked on what that point was. I've got to remember that obviously it's not like the big story until it's all wrapped up and it's all finished. And then I can, you know, put it all together, audiobook it, all that kind of good stuff.
So how does that work? So with those, if it's in 20,000 word chunks, is that a full story arc?
It's basically, I'm treating it like a TV show. So there's an overarching story that's going to tie it all together. And then each 20,000 word episode, it does have its own, I wouldn't say, you know, each, because it's got quite a few different perspectives from different people. So each section they go through sort of their little like positive to negative or negative to positive. There's sort of like varying shifts in what the attitude is. And then strung through each main episode is sort of like a real turning point in the story. So it keeps sort of shifting and zigzagging, and hopefully that's enough to pull people through. I've had fantastic, like, I'm really, really happy with the reviews that I've got so far and what people are saying. So the first episode,
I'm gonna have to read it at some point, I think.
Yeah. Well, the first episode seems to have hit the right chord, which is good. That's what I wanted. And then, yeah, the client work I did. I've cleared a big chunk of stuff off my plate, which was nice. So I think the last few weeks I felt a bit bogged down in the amount of things that I'm doing, even though I keep taking things on. But I've shifted a good chunk of that now. So I'm feeling a lot more on track and sort of on with it. And side note, I've also very nearly paid off my final credit card, which is beautiful and something that I've been wanting to do for a while now. So all in a good direction.
Amazing. Unfortunately, I now have a several $100,000 mortgage to pay off.
Hey!
Yeah, exactly. Yay, all the debt forever.
we switched. Weekly personal update. What have you been up to? What projects are you working on?
Okay, so obviously I handed off the books to Jay Thorne, and
in case you know who he was.
Yeah, and
talking to you, Jay.
And then I got out the dreaded manuscript. So this book, it's been 2 years since I published fiction. I have been writing fiction in the meantime, but I haven't published any fiction because I really need to get this book, third book in my series, done. And I don't know why I had this relationship with this particular book, but it's just been an absolute fuck to try and finish. And I've attempted it twice, and stumbled and fallen and not got it done twice. So I am going back this time and I will finish it. And I think I'm in a different place, in a different headspace. So I think I can do it. Just having read the first couple of chapters, I'm already like, okay, I know what needs to change at the beginning to help the rest of it. So yeah, I got that out and I've started reading it and sorting it out in Scrivener. So yeah, and then obviously, as I mentioned, I've been buying MDF wood for my audio booth, and I will be working on that. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, that's like, I mean, it's only, what day is it? Friday. Yeah, so that was, I don't really know where the last couple of days are gone. But anyway, yeah, I think I've been doing freelance work as well. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, my everything at the minute is When Winter Comes, episode 2, because as I say, it's set up for pre-order. That's already there. People have already pre-ordered it, even though it's not finished. And I'm basically slamming through this quite quickly. So I will have wrapped up my edits today, and then it goes off to an editor, and then that comes back. I'll do any tweaks, and then basically get that up on Amazon. And then in the meantime, I'm going to be slamming through When Winter Comes, episode 3, and getting that rolling, because I realised that, because obviously for the past few months I've been saying I'm going to decide the dates when this is going to launch, blah, 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 blah. One thing that I didn't take into account was giving ARC readers time to read it. So what's happened is I've now set all this stuff up and got it rolling, and realised I need to find an extra 2 weeks at least for like readers to actually have a chance to read through it. So I'm playing a little bit of catch up with myself. I don't think it's a bad thing, because if anything, it's just motivating me to get it done and to keep moving. And then by the time episode 3 is written, I can then take a little bit of a break before I approach episode 4. Because like I say, from episode 3 to 4, there's going to be a month gap in that release schedule. So working on that. And then, yeah, I've got to catch up with a couple of bits of client work as well. But I'm relatively on top of it. So
I'm also walking wounded this week. Did I message you a picture of my burn? Like, it's blistered, Dan.
It looks like a tadpole.
So for listeners and watchers, those watching will be able to see baked beans, guys. Baked beans burnt me. Like, of all the things, the fucking thing is blistered. So like, It must be actually quite a bad burn, because they don't blister unless it's bad. But anyway, yeah.
Did you cool it down when you were done, or did you just leave it?
Oh yeah, no, like the second it happened, I was like cold tap straight under.
Yeah.
So I think I got away. I think it's not as bad as it could have been, but it literally, like, the skin bubbled up and peeled back, like, and then like this morning I woke up and it's rebubbled.
That might scar.
Yeah, I think it is going to scar, unfortunately.
War wounded. Before we dive into the comments from last week's questions, I did also want to add that I absolutely loved listening to your interview with your daddy on the Rebel Author podcast. I thought it was fucking brilliant, and he's a person who I want to buy a pint, because I want to pick his mind and I want to talk to him, and so much of what he said just resonated with me completely. And I think there were points in that interview where I think you were worried about how that would connect with writing, but totally through the entire interview I could see like every sort of tangible connection to how you can compare what he does to an author business. So it was useful as fuck.
Yeah, which is crazy, because he is in such a completely different industry, but he is such a fascinating person to talk to. And like, if you get him talking, well, like, I'll talk to you about this off air, but yeah, he is a very interesting person to listen to, and also like captivating when he talks, especially in person. But yeah, it's funny you say that. I have had the most comments about my dad that I think I have on any other episode, which is so funny. And obviously he's fucking reveling in it as well, which is, I bet, furiously irritating for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I may have to have him on again at some point in the future, although for what, I don't know. But
definitely. I mean, one thing that I would highlight, and I think I messaged you the minute I heard it, because it was one of those bits that you hear and you just so, I've never heard that put so eloquently, and it was brilliant, was when you were basically talking about the art of negotiation and how you sort of you work those deals with people, and he literally said the trick is to never go in hungry. And that hit such a chord with me, because I think in any business you're doing, if you're desperate and if you're really like putting everything at stake, and obviously sometimes there's a reality of needing to put certain things at stake to progress, but even with the author business, I feel like I'm in a position where, you know, I want this life, I want this to continue, I want all the steps coming forwards, I'm not starving for it. I'm not like, I'm pushing towards it because I want that to come. And if that happens, then great. But I'm in a position where I'm not hungry. Does that make sense? I'm not sort of like desperately searching for it. I'm just taking the necessary steps to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I loved that comment as well, because I'd never heard it put like that, but it made so much sense because I can hear it creaking. He was basically saying that if you go into a negotiation full, so not hungry, what you essentially do is you take the power back in the negotiation, and the person who technically you should be selling yourself to ends up selling themselves to you. And it's just, it's negotiation psychology. But yeah, he does put it, and I tell you what, he has made some fucking deals in his time as well. Like he has made the deals.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it was a fun episode. Also,
go on. It's
by far my favorite Rebel story because of the context surrounding it.
So yeah, we'll put the link to that episode in the show notes. One final comment on that thing as well is as you were saying about the whole like be full when you go into the interview, my mind literally went to, that's why they say in relationships, treat them mean, keep them keen. If you're the one trying to like seek the affection, it's power dynamics, and it's I'm not saying do that in a relationship, but it's interesting to think about.
Got your number now.
Got my number. You know how it's working. So last week's question was, what is your relationship?
Wait.
Oh, go on.
Aren't we supposed to do the thing we've enjoyed this week? Where did that come? I thought that was
my thing.
Huh? Thanks.
There you go. Did you have one that you want to boast about?
Well, I am, yes. Okay. So obviously there has been lots of controversy and lots of rioting and political issues in America and the UK with Black Lives Matter movement. And so I created a thread in my Facebook group asking for lots of recommendations on not just Black Lives Matter reading material, but also any material from any diverse background. So be it mental health, be it disability, be it transgender, be it LGBT, be it anything from Black authors or whatever. And one of the books that a very dear writing friend called Tango actually sent me a copy of was Wildseed by Octavia Butler. And she is one of the people who inspired authors like N.K. Jemisin. And I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I read 5th season, I think it's 5th season, really recently. And that series, every single book in the series, which has never happened before, won the Hugo and the Nebula. I think it was both the Hugo and the Nebula. Anyway, I read the first book and it was spectacular. And I'm now reading Wildseed by Octavia Butler, and I wasn't sure if I would enjoy it when I started it, but I am loving it, and I can really see how it's influenced N.K. Jemisin as well. So it's really interesting to read a contemporary version, but I can almost hear similarities in the voice as well, which is really interesting. It's an interesting study to have read somebody who was influenced by Octavia Butler and now to be reading Octavia Butler. And anyway, it is a fantastic book, and it's also, there are some biblical echoes, I suppose. That's the only thing I can talk about it. So Cush was a character, I shouldn't say character, was a person from the Bible, but also it's shrouded, like if you're into conspiracies, then you can also see the echoes of conspiracies in there as well. So anyway, it is fantastic. It's really well written, not necessarily the sort of voice I would usually like, and I probably don't enjoy her voice as much as I enjoy more contemporary voices, but the story is fantastic and I'm really enjoying it. And so yes, I highly also recommend. Thank you, Tango, for the recommendation, and now I'm passing recommendation on to everybody else. So read Wildseed by Octavia Butler. That's my story. We can do comments now.
Beautiful. So last week we asked you guys, what is your relationship with risk and how do you manage it? And we had a slew of comments, Sacha.
We do. So HB Line said, I'm a lot like you, Sacha. I don't always see things as risk that others might. I'm very into planning and learning, so I see things differently. But I am quite careful about investing money into myself and my business. I do see that as a risk. I might not make the money back. That worries me a bit, but it also makes me more determined to succeed. And I get that. I fully understand it. Val Neal said, I'm pretty risk adverse, but I'm also not the breadwinner in my family, so I can afford to take more risks in my writing career, hoping things pay off in the long run. Adolpha Selra said, panicking and overthinking, I may have a problem. And then last but by no means least, Meg Jolly said, super interesting episode. Thank you very much. I was raised incredibly sheltered, so I'm a big old fraidy cat and spent my formative decades being very risk averse. That being said, life is also pretty damn boring when you don't take any risks. Totally agree. I think I'm like Sacha in that I see risks very differently to other people, because as a full-time author running several businesses, I never thought I'd be so up for being so responsible for everything and having the pressure / risk of it, and I love it. And she continues to say other things, but yes, I think you really, being in this industry and being an entrepreneur or self-employed, I think you have to like risk, and you have to like the pressure of having to deliver, otherwise it's just not for you.
It's almost empowering sometimes to know that the destiny does lie in your hands, and some people like that and some people don't.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, so into this week's question. Now, this question, I feel like you're going to hate me for, because it's been lingering around in the question sphere for some time. I'm trying to be quite deliberate with the wording, so pay attention to that. But this week's question is, how do you defeat imposter syndrome? How do you defeat imposter syndrome?
Well, I don't know that I do. Defeat it? I don't know.
So if you want me to give let me give you a little bit of time just to think, just so I can explain to anyone who's listening who doesn't know what imposter syndrome is. So imposter syndrome is the I'd say sort of mental state that you don't feel like what you're doing is up to snuff, like you don't fit in, like you're basically just trying to you're what's the word?
An imposter.
An imposter in the arena. So yeah, you feel like everything you're doing could be garbage, and you're just really like trying to put stuff out and it's not happening. And
it's more than that. It's a feeling that you don't belong. So for example, if you had recently completed your PhD and you were then going to teach in a university where you then become a peer with who were your professors, it's the feeling that you then don't deserve that position of authority. You don't belong because you haven't earned it, you don't warrant it, your work isn't good enough. So it's the psychological feeling of not belonging, not being worthy of, and not acknowledging your work. Such an asshole. Not acknowledging your work for the I hate you so much. for the value and worth. Yeah, you're right. This has
been lingering for a while, and I thought I'd wait until you'd moved and you'd settled. And
this is such a hard question, because I don't really honestly know how to answer it. I think every single author suffers with this, either all the time or at some of the time. I'm probably one of the people who suffers most of the time, and therefore I can't honestly say that I've ever defeated it, because it comes round. Like every time I do something new, I feel the imposter syndrome. I think the worst time I feel the imposter syndrome is right after I finish something. So it's less, so when I'm in the throes of drafting, I don't really feel it, because I'm so tunnel vision. I'm such a tunnel vision person that I only have time for the thing that I'm focused on. So if I'm drafting, there isn't really time to feel that unless I stop, which is probably one of the reasons I have such an issue trying to finish Trey. So then as soon as I either finish the first draft, I finish editing, or I publish, I tend to then fall in a pit of like, oh, it's shit, and blah blah blah, and
I laugh with
but
love.
then I'm you laugh what? Sorry.
I laugh with love.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if that's really the doubt or the imposter syndrome. I don't know how to answer this. This is such a hard. How do I defeat it? I honestly don't think I have, and that is a problem because I think the more I do stuff, for example, the more I podcast, the less of an imposter I feel. So, like when I first started podcasting, I literally nearly puked the first time I was like recording. The first time I interviewed somebody, I was physically shaking. Now I just get on and I'm like blah 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 blah, podcast, whatever. I don't, how do I defeat it? I continue. The thing with me is, and I think I said this on this podcast, it might be on the Rebel Author podcast, I don't know. But when I am afraid, I force myself to do the thing that I'm afraid of. And I think that is the only way through for me. So even though I was shitting myself about sending Jay the books, I knew I was going to do them. I just, because A, I'd committed to it, and B, I was afraid of doing it, and therefore I had to do it. And I was afraid of doing it because, what if he didn't like them? He's such a fantastic author, and, he's an indie legend, and therefore what if it wasn't good enough? But I feel like that over everything, even with the Anatomy of Prose, like publishing that, I was like, who are you to publish that? You're not good enough. What if it's shit? What if nobody learns anything? Blah, blah, blah. On and on and on. It's so boring. But yeah, I can't honestly tell you I have a mechanism for dealing with it, which is a problem because it's probably why I suffer constantly. But I'd be interested to see what you say.
Before I answer, I just want to ask another little follow up on that. So you say that obviously when something scares you, you just do it anyway. What would you say to someone listening to this question who is thinking, well, how the fuck do you do that? Because obviously fear paralyzes people. So what about the people that are in that situation? What would you suggest to them?
So okay. So with the fear, I ask myself, what do I want more? Do I want to let the fear win? And I'm competitive, so I really don't want it to win. Or do the thing that I want above anything else is this life. Okay? I want to write full-time. I want my business full-time. I want to be able to podcast. I want to collaborate. I want to live in this indie world. That is what I want more than anything. And that is stronger than fear. And in fact, I can go one step further than that and say, I think we all have a trait. Okay, every author who makes it and goes full-time shares this trait whether they like it or not, and that trait is obsession. Lots of people think that obsession is bad, and I'm not talking about the DSM-5 like psychological definition of obsessions. I'm not talking about unhealthy obsessions. I'm talking about the obsessive passion, tunnel vision, grit, determination. Every single indie author who's full-time, who has a career, shares this, and I will argue until I turn blue in the face that they share this trait. And obsession is like armor. It is a shield. It is a parasite, far more powerful than fear. Like fear is insidious. It gets into your cells, it gets into your bones, but so does obsession. And on the weighing scales, obsession is far weightier. It will have your back time and time again. And when I face a fear, it's the obsessive bit of me that will defeat the fear time and time again. So my advice would be to embrace that obsession, embrace the passion, and let it make your chair squeak.
Yeah.
No, but
Fucking
yeah,
chair.
like let it become powerful, because for me, the obsession wants this life more than the fear wants to make me afraid.
I love it. I love that so much. Okay, so my answer, I don't know if it's going to make you happy, but imposter syndrome has hit me quite bad in the past for particular situations that I've been in. So when I left university, my final year, I was the president of the parkour and the free running society. So I led that for a year. I grew it into what it was at Lincoln. Ended up inheriting a parkour coaching company off of a friend who ran a coaching company and then left to go and do it elsewhere. So I picked up what he left over in Lincoln. And the reason that kind of links to imposter syndrome for me is that I was doing all this coaching, and then I basically started going to other community centers, other schools and that, and pitching what we did. But I never felt like I earned that position, because I was basically handed a company. And the reason I was handed the company was because I was one of the only other coaches in Lincoln at the time that did that kind of stuff. So there was that element of, I'm not worthy. I've literally just been obviously it was a good thing and I loved doing it at the time, but there was, as I looked to expand, I just found it difficult because I didn't believe that I was worthy of growing it as it was. And then long story short, had an accident, went out of the parkour game for a while. And then when I started looking into proofreading and editing, it was because my partner at the time, her mum was a proofreader and editor and has been for 20 odd years. And I approached her and said, how do you get into this? How do you make it happen? Because I wanted to look at doing something freelance, something for myself. And she got me in touch with a woman who then gave me a load of clients. And I started working and doing editing for Palgrave Macmillan on academic texts and things for the next couple of years, running my own business. And again, that was another situation where I got to where I was like, even though I was doing the work, it felt like I hadn't earned it, because I just been given this opportunity. It's incredibly difficult to get into professional editing and proofreading, and there are qualifications you can get, there are obstacles you have to jump over, there's an entire sort of professional body that regulates the quality and the price and everything else. And I basically skipped ahead of all that and got to a point where I was working with clients and doing a good job, to the point that the woman who was quote unquote mentoring me at the time was happy with my work and still didn't have to oversee it too much, which should be verifying itself. But it wasn't, because again, it was just I feel like there should have been some kind of struggle to get to this point. And I'm not complaining. And I know that obviously it's really great to be given these opportunities. Bringing this right onto writing, when it came to writing back in 2015, when I was actually putting pen to paper, I'd been through publishing processes before. I knew editing, I knew all that kind of good stuff. So writing was the next sort of obstacle for me, because it was me putting myself on the line and going, can I do this? And my first novella did very, very well, and got me to the point that I met Horgan Cleaver, as we spoke about previously, and kind of started me on my writing journey. And I'm now at the point where I worked a full-time job. I did all my writing along the side. I know how hard I've worked to be where I am now. I know the hours I've put in. I know the kind of mental struggle that it takes to get to where you are. And I think I'm now in a position where I'm not saying I don't get imposter syndrome, but I'm saying that it doesn't affect me massively, because I still write for myself. And I think that's my secret, because any book that I'm putting out, even with When Winter Comes, I'm putting that book out, and I know that I'm putting it out fast, but I'm putting it out, reading back through what I've been doing, and I fucking love it. And I love the story that I'm telling, and I love how it's coming out on paper. And I recognize that other people won't like it. I recognize that some people will like it. And I'm just constantly now at a point where I'm doing the thing that I love. I'm writing for the art of it. I know that I'm putting as much of myself into it as I can. I know that I'm constantly working on craft, and I'm basically, quote unquote again, doing everything possible that I'm aware of to make sure that I'm succeeding. And I think momentum can be a huge part of it, because Collaboration for Authors came out this time last week, and I'm already looking ahead to writing the next book, the next non-fiction book. When Winter Comes came out on technically Monday, because Amazon is a bitch. But then the next book's coming out in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that. And I know what my next projects are, and I know the stuff that I want to be working on. So I think there's an element of, I don't allow imposter syndrome to catch up with me. And I've had, I do get negative reviews. There are certain things that I'm not 100% happy with my work. I'm not saying I'm bulletproof at all. But particularly with When Winter Comes, I've had like a slew of fantastic reviews, which I'm so pleased by. When Collaboration for Authors came out, I had very, very nice compliments from people who I respect massively on sort of the content of the book and the writing style itself. So I think I used to be really bad at accepting compliments, and I used to fall to the imposter syndrome, but I think I've now sort of bashed my head against the wall enough to know that I'm doing something right. And again, I'm not saying that everything that I'm doing is correct or that I'm going to be like flawless through and through, but I think just keeping that momentum going and knowing that I'm giving it everything that I have, and that's all I can do. I can't give more than I'm currently giving now, is enough for me to roll past what imposter syndrome would be for me.
I think the compliments, yeah, it does. I think the compliments one is, well, hang on. So yeah, I'll finish this and then I'll say what the other thing. The compliments one is interesting. It wasn't until somebody, because I used to never be able to accept a compliment, and then somebody turned around and said, do you know how rude it is not to accept a compliment?
Do you know how hard it is to get a compliment?
Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, you are rebuffing and pushing back a positive that somebody wanted to give you. And I was like, oh. And even though, like, when I first started accepting compliments, I found it incredibly hard. All I used to do was say thank you, and that was it. And that's how I started trying to accept compliments, because that's all you need to say, and B, that then acknowledges the fact that their positivity, and so I don't want to be the person that puts negativity back to somebody who's tried to give me a positive. So I still find it hard to accept them, but I will always say thank you now, and that's it. On the, you were talking about momentum, I think that's almost, I think we are saying the same thing, we're just experiencing it slightly differently, because that is, that's what I was trying to say about the podcast. I've done it so often now that you just, but with the, and I know you asked me this because of the stuff with Jay, but that is new, which is why it's terrifying. And I suspect, if I do more collaborations, then I will feel less impostery. But yes, I think I am. I think people think I am very confident, and I'm not actually. I'm like this terrified little girl most of the time, who has a very vicious bite if you piss her off.
Yes. Now, I think it's a skill to find the levels of how you let compliments affect you, because there's definitely an element of, if you just soak it all up and if you only listen to the good reviews, you're gonna get big-headed. You're gonna basically get cocky, and you're sort of going to go completely in the other direction. And I think, in a big way, a lot of people in life have been trained not to accept compliments and to look more at the negative stuff, because the negative stuff needs fixing, as opposed to looking at the positive stuff. And I think partly because of all the self-development stuff I've looked into over the last few years, and sort of like the people that I watch and the journeys that I've studied, the people who do well and succeed are those that can accept compliments and understand the value of themselves to the point where they can keep moving forward, rather than going too far where it hinders them, or sort of just constantly questioning what they're doing.
Yeah, I think two other tangible takeaways for people, if you do suffer with imposter syndrome as well, is to do what Dan just said, which is to read positive mindset self-help books, because we both do that, and they have, you were talking in one of the other podcasts about you are the 5 things that you do most, that you are a product of the things that you allow, that influence you the most. And I try and put lots of non-fiction self-help stuff in. So yes, that's one thing I would say recommend. And the other thing is, I have a digital, what used to be physical, but digital scrapbook, essentially, where the things that really make my day, I will screenshot and put in there. I've probably only gone back and looked in there like once on one day when I was in a really shitty place. But actually just knowing it's there, it's nice, you know, in 10 or 15 years to have a collection of, you know, orange bestseller tags or whatever, just to see the journey that you've been on. Yeah, exactly. So, and I will, if somebody sends me a nice email, I'll screenshot it, put it in there. If I get an orange bestseller tag, if I get, or whatever, if, you know, a nice tweet or something, I'll just screenshot it and put it in there. I mean, honestly, I very, very rarely go in there, but even knowing that it's there is nice, because I know that there is a folder of nice things. But I mean, the thing for me is I don't really get validation externally. So most of the imposter syndrome is in here in my head, and so I have to do those battles internally for the most part, because like negative reviews, positive reviews, they all just hit a wall now for me. So it's all internal for me dealing with this, I think. But yeah, wicked question, you bastard. At the start I was like, I have no idea how I'm gonna answer this, but yeah, when you got me going, then I was like, actually no, I can answer this. So
I think it's important to know that as well. It's an ongoing process, and I know that I'm not immune to it, and that it will at some point come back when I start looking at other things or whatnot. But yeah, it's not affected me personally too badly lately, which has been quite nice. But the audience, we ask you the question: how do you defeat imposter syndrome? And again, very, very deliberate with that wording. Talk about how we can proactively try and conquer it, because if we can try and put some kind of resource together for how everyone collectively battles it, and that'll be useful as hell. How are we leveling up our author business this week?
I think I will be doing 3 things. I will be priming my audio booth. I'll say one class, one module for my course. I would love to think I will get many more, but I will say a minimum of one module done for my prose anatomy course. And I will also, I don't know how to quantify it, but I need to do some work on Trey. So I'm reading through it. I'm really finding it. All I can say is I'm going to do I need to have worked on Trey, whatever that looks like, because I don't know if I'm reading it now, but I don't know if I'll read all the way to the end before I then start working. I just need to read enough to know that actually I know exactly how to fix this. So reading, and because also I'm then making notes and doing the bloody scene synopsis, which I should have done for each scene as I was writing it. Outline, whatever you want to call it. So work on Trey, one class module. Really very deliberate with my wording. One module for my Anatomy of Prose course, and priming the audio booth. So 3 things this week. What about you?
Find that, so when we first started doing these How We're Leveling Up, there was a part of me that was like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to push further than I thought I could, because then, you know, it means I'm going to get more done this week. But actually what it's done, which is quite good, is it's actually made me reevaluate how long it takes to do specific things, because you don't want to be that person that gets a forfeit, but at the same time, you want to do enough that you are challenging yourself. So finding that middle ground is quite difficult.
Also, it's made me very specific, which I wouldn't necessarily have which I wouldn't necessarily have done before. Because what I'm hoping is that I can overachieve on all of these things. Listen, see, this is the secret. Under promise, over deliver.
Yes.
Yeah, baby.
It's my ethos for Devil's Rock.
Exactly.
So my things are going to be finishing up my edits on When Winter Comes #2, getting over to the editor, and then getting it in the hands of ARC readers. And I'm going to finish my non-fiction work project that I'm working on at the minute, which I cannot talk about. I'm going to get that done by when we record next Friday. If we happen to record on next Thursday, I will have a large amount done, being very deliberately with deadline to it.
We are so evil to each other.
But I'm gonna crack one out, do that.
Oh my god, this has descended into chaos.
And on that note, thank you very much for tuning into the Next Level Authors, and we will see you next week.
Bye bye.
Hungry for more?
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can hear more of my angelic accent and Dan's dulcet tones on our other podcasts.
For more of me, check out the Great Writers Share podcast.
For more of me, listen to the Rebel Author podcast. We'll be back next week holding each other to account as Dan
and Sacha
become
Next Level
authors.